Hello, I am Mukesh Bansal. Welcome to SparX. In today's episode, I want to talk about digital addiction. Digital addiction is something that is all around us, and yet no one notices it. I am reminded of the story that Shyam Bhatt mentioned, which is about these two fishes swimming upstream, and they encounter an older fish who asks them, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the young fish respond, "What's water?" We are so much swimming in the digital content consumption that we don't even realize how much part of our day goes into just consuming all this content mindlessly. All of us, irrespective of age, throughout the day are continuously hooked to our little shiny black things which commands all of our attention. It is irrespective of age. Today, everybody from a 6-month-old infant to a 90-year-old is spending most of our day engaging with the devices. You go to any house and talk to an older person who may be in their 60s or 70s, a big part of their day goes into interacting with their devices. They are consuming content, they are using social media, they are continuously communicating, doing this mindlessly WhatsApp forward to each other, to all the groups they are possibly part of. You watch, how parents feed a small infant. They'll put an iPad in front of them, play a video which will have these animated characters bouncing around and which hooks the attention of a little kid. And parents are able to feed the kid whatever they want to. In the process, getting the child hooked to digital media at a very early age. We may call them digitally native and so on as if it's a great thing, but it's also hijacking their attention. And I think it is irrespective of age group. A lot of teenagers will walk around mindlessly. They are so fast with their fingers and phones that they can talk to somebody or pretend to talk to somebody while typing, carrying on multiple conversations on their WhatsApp simultaneously. People in offices, show up in the meetings, but pretty much everybody will bring their smartphone or laptops into the meeting room. Now something is presented on the screen. People are paying partial attention to that, but every few minutes, they're also looking down to see what notification is waiting, what is a new message, why is that? And while I'm going to talk about, the fact that nearly all of us are addicted to it, no one is immune from it, but this is something which is causing deep damage to all of us. I have personally struggled with this for a long period of time. I've been monitoring my digital media usage, and it's not where I would like it to be. And it's way too much for me. For example, if I just go to my phone right now and just go to digital wellness section, on iPhone. So my daily phone consumption over last week is about 2.5 hours. And if I scroll down and look at how many times I pick up my phone, it's nearly 80 to 100 times. Now think about that. If you're picking up your phone 100 times in a day in the waking hours, that translates into almost 5-6 times every hour, or a pickup once every 5 to 10 minutes. Now, and this is, I think, on the lower side. I've been asking a lot of people around me to go to their phone and share their phone consumption. And most people are somewhere between 2 hours to 10 hours. Yes, 10 hours, if you can really believe it. And the number of pickups, range from anything from 15, which is, I think, is respectable, to as many as 300 or 400 times. 300 times pickups in a day means you're picking up your phone every 2 to 3 minutes. That's absolutely insane. That means, really not paying attention to anything, whether in a classroom or an office meeting or having a conversation with someone or having a lunch or dinner at the dining table. Every few minutes, you reach out for your phone, you see what is a new thing waiting for you. And it is so bizarre that even people whose job, may require them to think deeply, even they are addicted to their mobile phones. It seems like there is no limit to it. It's so pervasive that age is not a factor, education level is not a factor. Even people who design these technologies are not immune from this addiction. Everybody in Silicon Valley knows that most tech executives try to get their kids to not use iPhones and iPads because they know how addictive it is. Steve Jobs famously did not allow his kids to use iPad because he thought they'll end up spending too much time with it. And he was obviously absolutely right about that. And a lot of tech executives understand that. And therefore, they go out of their way to try to not get their kids hooked to these devices, while rest of us don't have anyone protecting us from it. And these devices are absolutely addictive. I'll argue throughout today's episode that this continuous digital addiction is causing irreparable harm from all kind of things. and something we need to pay a lot of attention to. The mobile phones have become so integral part of our lives that these days nobody loses their mobile phone. If you remember, when we started getting smartphones early on, every 6 months or 1 year, you lose your phone. You may lose an auto, taxi, at the airport, at office, and then, that'll cause, in those days, mild panic. Today, if you lose your phone, it's a full-blown crisis because we are so much aware of where our phone is. People are continuously subconsciously aware. It has almost become like a third appendage, and therefore, we don't lose our phones. I have not lost a phone for the last 5-6 years. I think most people don't. Is because we have such deep subconscious awareness, where exactly our phone is. If you separate people from their phones for even a minute or two, we start to feel anxiety. If you don't believe me, you can try this experiment right now. Leave your phone in a different room. Or if you're really adventurous, try to leave your phone at home while you drive to work today. You will see that you start feeling this anxiety, feel tingling in your fingers, you feel something is not right with the world until you are united back with your phones. What is that? If not, absolute utter dependency, which I think has been engineered deliberately. There's a whole business model which is supporting that, and we'll look in a lot of depth into how that has come to be. Just 15 years ago, there were no smartphones in the world. Social media was almost unheard of, in very small circles. What has changed in last 15 years that we cannot live without it? In fact, we are so addicted that we need to have a dose of dopamine through content or social media or next email or message from our phone that, we just have to keep reaching out for it every 2 to 3 minutes. You can do the maths. In this podcast, I've talked about that all of us have effectively 10,000 working days over 40-year career. If you're spending, 6 to 8 hours a day, that's half of your productive time going into some screen consumption. Most of it is probably not productive. So 5,000 of those 10,000 days can easily go into just media content consumption through these devices. And that is, that is not going to let you create anything meaningful. 10,000 days itself is very little to begin with. If a 1/4 or half of that is going to end up in the mindless consumption of content and communication in these digital devices, then you'll be left with very little time to do whatever it is that you want to do. So I want to also introduce, this whole idea of digital minimalism, which has gained some traction in last 10 years. Some people are not noticing the adverse impact that continuous digital consumption is having in our life. People have started to talk about it. Some of the authors and books that I really like, Cal Newport, for one, and Robert Greene, in their respective books, they've talked about this philosophy that undistracted time is the most important ingredient for quality of thinking. To produce anything of value, if you are not able to create that 4 to 6 hours of undistracted time, it's very, very difficult to produce anything of quality. It is as relevant for learning as for producing something. Is also equally important for relationships. If you are having, I think biggest respect we can give to somebody is the attention we give them. If you are having a conversation with someone, if you are not able to hold your attention for 15 minutes or 30 minutes and continuously distracted, the quality of conversation and the connect with the person is going to be really low. And ultimately, it will end up creating at best a very superficial relationship, or you may not even have recollection of the conversation you had with that person. But by developing awareness about how deeply addicted most of us may be, and why some level of digital de-addiction, digital minimalism is important, you might be able to wrest control of using technology for what it is good for, and not letting technology use you for what your attention might be useful to many of the larger organizations which are behind building all these devices and the apps and content around that. In this episode, I want to go a little deeper into what is it that makes these devices so addictive. Most of us will think that we have some element of self-control. Some of you might have sweet tooth, but doesn't mean you eat sweets, throughout the day. Even if you binge, maybe every now and then, but it's not a everyday affair, or definitely not an every hour affair. So what is it about digital devices and content that make us so addictive that we have to keep reaching out for them every few minutes for hundreds of times in a day. You should definitely take audit of digital media use. Today, all devices support the screen time feature in both iPhone and Android devices. So I'll request you at this point, if you can pause this podcast right now, go to your phone, go to screen settings, see what has been your trend of screen usage in over last, say, few weeks. You can see your daily average on a weekly basis, and you can look at both the total screen time and how many times you're picking up the phone. If you're below 2 hours and below 50 times pickup, I think you are pretty decent. I think they'll put you in the top, 2-3 percentile of people. If you're between 2 to 4 hours, which is where I am at right now, I think it's a bit too much. At least it's not great for me. And I've had phases where I was able to cut it down to below 1 hour, even below 30 minutes, and nothing changed. Well, something did change, and I became more productive during that time. But unfortunately, I keep falling back as well. But if you are above 4 hours, then you need to very seriously think about it. None of us have more than 12, 13 productive hours in a day. If 4 to 6 hours of that is going into consumption via screens, unless you happen to be an influencer and your day job is to produce content for other people to consume, for rest of us, that 4 to hours, 6 hours is too much. So just take stock of things, see where you are at. I think any de-addiction program starts with awareness. So let's develop a good baseline awareness of where we are today. And then throughout this podcast, we'll look into both science of how addiction works and what are all the tools that we have available at our disposal to be able to take control of how we use digital devices and content in our lives. I've already used the word addiction so many times. Whenever we talk about addiction, we need to start with dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter which is deeply involved in any kind of addictive behavior. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter which is involved in any kind of motivation. Whenever we need to exert effort to try to get something or get us to do any action, dopamine is involved. Dopamine evolved in nature to be able to provide that motivation. It's a very potent neurotransmitter which is released in minute quantities. And historically, it used to be very difficult to find some dopamine. You need to only few activities like sugary food or sex or being in nature, or very few things, only very few and far in between. Today, like a lot of products, where people want us to consume a lot of things, they've really figured out a way how to hack our dopamine system, whether it's a sugary, salty snack or adrenaline-infused content, anything that can produce the temporary high becomes more appealing because we want more and more of that. But the thing with dopamine is it's a zero-sum game. The way our brain works is we have something called dopamine baseline. So we have a constant baseline that is not going to change. Now the baseline is not going to change. So what happens is if I do an activity which immediately boosts my dopamine, for example, let's say I have a piece of chocolate and I like that, I feel good and happy immediately. But afterwards, to maintain my baseline, the dopamine level has to go below baseline. And then I will feel something is amiss, I'm lacking that. And therefore, I'll want to do something else again. Maybe let's say I end up having another bite of chocolate. The dopamine go up again, but not as much. And if you repeat this cycle a few times, the level of dopamine stop rising at all. Now, to get that dopamine high, I need to keep consuming more and more of that. And that is a basic cycle behind any addictive behavior. Initially, very little of it gives us a lot of pleasure. We feel very excited doing that activity. And then as the brain tries to goes back to the baseline and first dips even below baseline, we start craving for more. We want that next dopamine hit, which can happen if you do the activity again, but not as much, and so on. And this is where all digital devices, they've been designed to give us that immediate dopamine kick. In 20 years ago, as smartphones were coming out and people were designing all these apps, they wanted to figure out how can we get people to spend more and more time on digital devices. So people actually, if you can believe it, studied behavioral psychology, studied what are the other areas where people demonstrate addictive behavior. And they borrowed a lot of techniques, tools, science from those domains, including from why gambling is so addictive. One of the big things about gambling is variable reward. Every time you put on a bet, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So in anticipation of a possible win, we feel this surge of dopamine, that anticipation about we might hit it big. And whether you do hit it big or not, but that anticipation has already created the high for you. And hence, gambling is so addictive because of variable reward. And a lot of apps use that feature to give us variable reward. That's just one example of how these apps are made addictive. But if you zoom out and look at, what is the business of most of the big tech, it is to command our attention. Let's take example of Facebook. So if I use Facebook for 2 hours a day, it's effectively what I'm saying is, hey, Facebook, I'm going to give you 2 hours of my day. You are giving me this continuous dopamine kick through, whatever new things I see on my news feed, new message I get, some interesting pictures I get to see. But in return, I've traded off 2 hours of my day. Now, Facebook is collecting 2 hours from me, 2 hours from Aditya, 2 hours from Sakshi, and 2 hours from billions of people, packaging it and selling it to advertisers. That's their business model. And if I'm an advertiser, which, some of the work I do, I also advertise in all this media. And so we are able to capture your attention. And, as an advertiser, we can sell you any product or services. So that is, Facebook business model. That is Google's business model. So anything that allows these apps to mine more of, mine your attention is great for their business model. Today, we have tens of thousands of really, really smart people in the world. People with computer science PhD, people who are AI and machine learning expert, people who are top-notch behavioral psychologists in the world. They are continuously thinking about how do we design ever more efficient algorithms? How will we design that interesting feature that is so appealing that is going to get people hooked to want to come again and again. I feel this is an unfair race. Author Jonathan Hari has in his book Stolen Focus has talked about this extensively, that this is a race between average person like you and me out there and some of the top minds of our time who are working for Google and Facebook and many other big tech companies and designing these novel strategies to capture our attention. And they're winning, and it's no surprise, they're winning because they have access to everything we know about how our brain works today, everything about neurochemistry, last 50, 60 years of behavioral psychology, deep understanding of how addiction works, and access to immense amount of data. As a result, their business models are immensely successful. These companies are global giants. In some cases, they're bigger and more powerful than even the nation states of the world, and only getting stronger. So this is the world we live in, where our attention is valuable. It's immensely valuable to a lot of companies. And if we are going to give it up without a fight, those companies are definitely going to benefit from it, but you are not benefiting from it. In fact, you are probably suffering a lot as a result, in terms of your mental health, your relationship, sleep quality, health, able to pay attention and focus. And hence, it's very, very important for us to understand, what we can do to be totally in control and not let our attention slip away and keep falling deeper and deeper into this addiction cycle. This digital addiction manifests in so many different ways. I think one of the biggest culprits is obviously social media. We have everything ranging from Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. It's part and parcel of our everyday life. These mediums are on 24/7. You can, any time of the day, you can check your feeds, and definitely something new and interesting is waiting for your attention. And sometimes it happens so fast that even every few minutes is not enough to keep pace. But social media, for all practical purpose, didn't exist 20 years ago. Social media in the past was you have to go out, seek out a real person, engage them in conversation, and slowly build on the conversation. And that was the social media. And when I was in college, I think the highlights that me and my friends still remember is all the late night conversations we'll have. And there was no television, there was no mobile phones. Everyone was in it, and we will have multi-hour conversations. And 30 years down the line, we still remember those conversations. I doubt it. Your social media consumption for today, you're going to remember even tomorrow, let alone 30 years from now. But that's social interaction for most of us. Now, how this come to be? I'm reminded of the experience and journey of the engineer Azar Raskin. He was an engineer at Mozilla, and in 2007, he was trying to figure out how can we reduce friction. He was inspired by his father, who incidentally worked at Apple and he was a fan of extremely simple design, his father gave him this ultra simplistic razor with just one blade as an example of what a perfect design could look like. And he had that image in mind when he was thinking about when people browse internet, the pages used to be fixed length at the time. So you have some content on the web page, you read it, and then you want more content, you click on next page. Now, the clicking on next page is a friction. A lot of people may not do it. And he was thinking about, how can I reduce this friction? And it occurred to me, what if the moment I reach the end of the page auto reloads the next section of content without user having to click. So all user need to do is scroll down, there's more content. You scroll down, there's more content. When he launched this feature, he was able to see the average time people were spending more than doubled in one shot with one single feature. Now, everybody in the social media space obviously want to have as much attention as possible. So this feature caught on, and within few years, it became standard feature. Today, you go to any e-commerce site or any social media feed, they basically use this infinite scroll. It became so successful. And if we assume that this single feature alone led to doubling of the time people spend with these devices, that's double the attention, double the revenue, double the harm, that's all of us suffering from. And eventually, even Azhar Raskin came to realize that while at the time he was trying to optimize for time spent online, he has probably caused a lot of disservice. He calculated and he feel that the single feature is probably resulting in wasting human potential worth hundreds of thousands of lives every single day. He talks about this extensively in the documentary Social Dilemma, where he retraces the journey of creation of this feature, how it caught on, and how ultimately he came to regret it. This is from one of the pioneers in the field. Another example is that of like button. So when Facebook caught on in 2005-6 time frame, they had the growth problem. They were thinking about how can we get users to engage more. If I post a picture, at the time, the only way for people to engage was to write some comments. And some people writing comments, and for the person who's posting, it was great to see that comment. But writing comment is a difficult process. You have to think of something, you have to think of some words, you have to type on the keyboard. It's a very high friction process. And Facebook engineers were thinking about how can they reduce this friction. Somebody had an idea of, what if we just have a like button? If somebody likes my post, they can click on the like button. Initially, Facebook was not sure whether this will catch on or not, but after a year of debate, when they launched, they suddenly realized that it led to explosion of engagement. It just went through the roof. It was so successful that Facebook not only incorporated that feature, it pretty much across all of their apps, they also patented it. You can Google it. Facebook still has patent on like button. Now the patent is about how the like button is implemented. So it's more of an implementation patent because it was not a feature patent. Many other, in fact, I think there is not a single application in the world today which does not have like button. So like button was invented 15 years ago. And today, we cannot live without like button. And a lot of people will suffer from severe self-esteem issues if you post some content, you don't get enough likes. I'm pretty sure the podcast team also pays a lot of attention to how many likes you are getting. It's not necessarily the right metric. I think, we should probably better off looking at comments, and hopefully, we should be able to trigger conversation. We are getting a lot more engagement, through participation, through dialogue, through commentary on whatever we're saying, whether it's relevant, not relevant, what we are covering, not covering, and just not mindlessly collecting a lot of likes. But like an example of a very simple feature, which was very intelligently designed and has contributed immensely to success of Facebook as well as many other social media platforms. A lot of psychology of like button goes to original experiments by psychologist B.F. Skinner. He did his pioneering work in 30s, so it's a 100-year-old work. But what he was trying to do, he was trying to study that how does behavior-reward loop work. This was required for a lot of animal studies in the lab. You want animals to do certain, demonstrate certain behavior again, because they are trying to study that. But how do you get animals, ranging from rats and cats and dogs and parrots and chimpanzees to do that, So B.F. Skinner, he figured out that by reinforcing certain behavior by a reward, which the animal in question can anticipate, they can demonstrate that behavior on a repeated manner. And so he published some pioneering studies eventually, and that's how pretty much all the labs around the world came to be. A lot of all kind of experiments, and to be honest, a lot of progress has happened as a result of those studies. But the behavioral psychologists understood that reward function can really train our behavior. A lot of social media apps today, use this reward mechanism quite blatantly. Like is one form of reward. Someone sends a nice emoticon, that's a different form of reward. Even, when we see there's a notification and 4 notifications waiting for us, that triggers that itch to anticipate what's waiting for us. We go there, read those messages or the emails. That's a kind of reward. Everybody uses scratch cards. That's a different type of variable reward. You don't know what's waiting for you. There are all kind of sweepstakes and so on. There is, endless list of rewards that people have created to hook our attention. There is, variable reward. We don't know exactly what we would get, and therefore we keep going back and back. And social media apps are absolute experts at that. There was a time 5-6 years ago when started to get more and more attention. At some point, Facebook deployed a team of scientists, internal scientists, to really study whether social media is indeed addictive behavior. And despite what they would have liked, the internal study proved conclusively that it is indeed very addictive. According to the report, the findings were very clear. It summarized that our algorithms exploit the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. What did Facebook do about this? Absolutely nothing. The study was overlooked. It is so much reminiscent of what the tobacco companies were doing in 60s and 70s. They had all these studies, but they were ignoring. They will find some other justification. Facebook is of course connecting humanity. They have larger than life purpose. Which with that they will use a justification. And there is again, I'm not arguing that social media is not useful. It allowing families to be in touch, to track what's happening around the world. Information travel really fast. So it is serving a lot of useful purpose as well. But that cannot take away the fact that it is addictive. And even all the social media companies at this point know that it is addictive. What they will do about this, they will only figure out. Fortunately, this is a topic which is now being researched rigorously in universities around the world. I was looking into one study at University of Ottawa where researchers studied over 6,000 kids from the age range of 8 to 18. They monitored their social media use. It was a self-reported study, but what they found that the kids who were using social media for more than 3 hours, they experienced variety of psychological distress ranging from lack of self-esteem, tiredness, depressive episodes, feeling low about themselves, not feeling connected to a community around them, and so on. This is one example where there is a direct evidence of continuous social media usage leading to poor psychological health. These are very formative years. So many changes happen during that age. People figure out who they are, identity form. And if, because you are addicted to social media, you are having these psychological distress at a certain early and formative stage of your life, it is only going to get worse over a period of time. I think all parents need to pay a lot of attention to how much social media their kids are using, because if it is more than few hours a day, there is no doubt that is causing some serious damage today, which is continue to compound, and I don't think any parents will want that for their kid. This is my own experience with social media. For some reason, early on, I realized that the trade-off wasn't worth it for me. Amount of time I would spend on social media versus I'll get back in return, and I have religiously avoided social media for last 15 years. I guess it's changing with this podcast because we want this content to be consumed by as many people as possible. So, but, I try to limit, my interaction on social media to only related to what we are trying to communicate through this content, which I think, we are talking about important topics. We need more and more conversation about this. We try to cover this in depth. It's not very superficial content, but I'm very mindful of, the intent is definitely not to increase social media consumption. In fact, a lot of people can listen to this content just over voice while doing something else. If someone else goes out for a walk and listens to it, I'll be thrilled, because then you are learning something interesting and relevant while, getting sunlight and getting some steps in. One of the mental models I've used for longest period of time, from author Nicholas Taleb, he talks about the difference between news and books. Now, you can spend an hour a day reading social media feeds or newspaper or reading a book. What is the difference? Most of what we consume via social media is very ephemeral. It does not last more than a few hours. So when newspaper reports all the good, bad idea that happened yesterday, but most of that is not going to be relevant 3 months down the line. But when you read a book, the content is something that author has deeply thought about, taken pains to articulate, revise, refine. So by the time you're reading it, it has stood the test of time. It probably reflects some deeper human stories or scientific facts or some concepts that you can think about and potentially incorporate in your lifestyle. So I've always chosen to consume as many books as possible as compared to short-lived news. And I think this mental model works for me. You can think about, whether what trade-off you want to do between the content which takes effort to produce and therefore much likelihood of high quality. Magazine periodicals are like that. I like to read Harvard Business Review, which is published only every 2 months. And behind every article, there's a lot of work that goes into synthesizing the content, as opposed to, people just mindlessly throwing things on their Twitter feeds and news feeds, and it may feel interesting and novel for the time being, giving that dopamine hit, but it's not going to be relevant for the most part. So you can think about, if you have an hour or two a day to invest behind content consumptions, are you better off reading books or documentaries or even watching movies or podcasts, or just bite-sized content, non-stop stream of bite-sized content throughout the day? I don't think, it's going to do world of good for most people. What's true of social media is also true of many other modes of digital consumption. Content and OT is one such mode. Today, we have the entire world's content available on our fingertips on every device at any corner of the world at nearly free price. And as a result, people are consuming content continuously. Content is getting better and better. Today, so much AI and algorithms is deployed in analyzing the scripts, in designing characters, in really figuring out exactly which dialogues, which emotion, which characters will work well. As a result, all the new content that comes on Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of the platforms is so good that we watch in anticipation. In fact, as in when a new season of a popular series is released, people binge watch the whole thing overnight, 10, 12 hours of binge consumption. Now, how this come to be, how it come from the world where content was rare, there's very high friction, to this no friction world of continuous content consumption. Again, like social media, it has been very deliberately designed, leveraging everything we know about addictive behavior, designing these things intelligently, very deep algorithms which now use a lot of AI. Just to give you an example of some simple features, autoplay. There was a time there was no autoplay. You watch an episode and you are done. And unless you think about searching for the next episode, you go back in the list, find the next episode, play as the only way you play. So very high friction process. At some point, Netflix and other platforms figured out if they just let the next episode autoplay, the chances are you will get hooked and start watching is going to be that much higher. And that's how it's panned out. Today, pretty much all series will autoplay. Now, you can take control of these things. All these platforms have a feature where you can go back to settings. You can disable autoplay. Now, that one simple change of disabling autoplay is probably going to significantly reduce how much content you consume. You can remove the shortcuts of all these apps from your phone. Even if you have it, don't keep it on homepage at least. My recommendations will do not have OTT apps on your phone. All of us have larger screens at home, whether it's desktop or television. I think that's sufficient, where you can have your undivided attention. If you're driving, you're out for a walk, or you're having a dinner with someone, that's probably not the best time to also watch content on your phone. So it's a simple hack, but it's going to introduce a lot of friction. And the only place you can watch content is when you're in front of television. If you can remove this OTT app from your phone, then you are not taking the content with you when you're going to sleep in bed. Today, so many people watch content after they retire to their bedrooms to sleep, and then they pull out their phones or iPad and play content. And content so good, you get sucked in, and that's, as bad as it can get, because at night time, you are trying to induce sleep. You want to get a good night's sleep. Instead, you are not only watching content, which is going to spike up your adrenaline. You have all this blue light going into your eyes. So that time at which you are supposed to be feeling drowsy and calming down and getting ready to sleep, you are getting more and more awake and alert and heightened in emotions, through all this, adrenaline-fueled content or drama that you're consuming, and that just, everything about that is bad. And if you can just get rid of that from your phones and only consume on the big screen, at least you'll have to go to your living room. I hope you don't have television in your bedroom. If you do, it's a terrible idea. I have never had television in my bedroom. I think, that's defeats the purpose of, create a calm, serene environment to be able to go to sleep. As we'll discuss again and again, the fundamental pillar of good health is good night's sleep. And bringing content at night time into bedroom is about as bad as it can get. Another type of content which is designed to be absolutely addictive is gaming. There are millions, probably hundreds of millions of people around the world who spend countless numbers of hours every single day engaged with the games of their liking. It has gotten so bad that in 2019, World Health Organization added gaming disorder in their international classification of diseases. Clearly, people who are suffering from gaming disorders. We can see all around us, there are older people in India who are addicted to variety of Ludo games. And I personally know of old people who would spend as much as 5-6 hours a day playing Ludo games mindlessly. That's the first thing they'll do when they get up in the morning. That's the last thing they'll do. They're probably able to, when Ludo was probably the only game available 50, 60 years ago, and people have a lot of childhood memories. Now in the old age, we have nothing else to do. You have digital version of these games available, which help you relive those memories. And there is, that desire to want to do well in the next game, get a better score, get to next level, and so on. There are so many examples of variety of video games, completely hooking people. I'm recalling the story of Don Nguyen. He was the creator of this game Flappy Bird in 2013. He wanted to create a game which is going to have right level of challenge as well as satisfaction of getting the job done. He created an absolutely simple game where the job of the game was to keep this bird in the air by just a single tap. It was so easy that you can drive your car with one hand and just keep doing tap with the other hand to play the game. And no wonder the game took off. It became immensely popular. At some point, he was drawing ad revenues of over $50,000 a day. The game notched 90 million downloads in just 6 to 9 months after the launch. But he also started to get a lot of feedback from people that, or from parents, that kids are absolutely addicted to the game. They are starting to fall behind on their studies, not doing well in their exams. He became very concerned about what he has created. And at some point, he decided to take the game off. He thought he was doing the right thing. And then he started getting death threats. A lot of people thought the Flappy Bird game was so integral to their life, they cannot literally live without it. And they are willing to even harm the person who created the game if he chooses to take it down. But he felt that game is causing irreparable damage. So he took the game out. But by the time the cat was literally out of the bag, or bird in this case, people realize these kind of simple games with the birds, a pattern that works. There are dozens of copycat games have since come up. They continue to be immensely popular. But if you think about video games, everything, that works for addictive behavior. There are clear rewards. Every time you cross a level, there is a sense of accomplishment. You are in that exclusive club. You get, more points or more ammunition or more lives. You get status. So many games are all about, earning status in the virtual world by achieving a certain level. It's a variable reward. It doesn't always work. You put in some effort. Your efforts are rewarded. You get peer approval. So almost anything that can potentially go into designing addictive behavior is part of how games are designed today. And no wonder, games are not only, they consume a lot of people's attention, but getting to a point where it is officially acknowledged as a disorder that people need to do something about. Another very simple tool that captures all of our attention, definitely a workspace, is email. Today, our email is available at desktop, laptop, iPads, phone, watch. And email is a 24/7 on. Most people can get email any moment of time, and the moment you get an email, you get multiple notifications unless you disable those notifications. Now, for a lot of us, just mindlessly consuming email in this large, what author Cal Newport calls a big hive mind, where all of us are just shuffling emails around. A lot of the email threads will have dozens of people copied on it. I reply, then the dozen of people get one more reply. They add some more people on the email thread. It goes on, and it gives a false sense of productivity. We feel that if we can process 50 emails, we are somehow productive, but it's a very shallow work. We are just responding to something very superficial, which just happened in the moment, and that's a total antithesis of high quality work. So you can proactively monitor your email use. One of the things I've been trying to do that I want to check my email only once a day, or at most twice a day. Again, I'm not able to follow it all the time, but the days I check my email only once a day, I realize I get a lot done. I'm not distracted. I'm not reacting to anything might be going on over various email threads. But again, if you don't pay attention to it, becomes a habituated behavior. You get a notification, you go to your phone, you check your email, you feel like responding to it, and whatever else you are trying to do gets interrupted. I have not noticed any delay or holding people back if I respond back in 8 hours or 12 hours. I think most people can easily do that. A lot of us get all kind of spam mails today. You can choose to unsubscribe. Every email has at least, fortunately, you can mark it as spam, or you can go to the bottom and click on unsubscribe. It takes a little bit of effort now, but then you will not get that email for the rest of your life, at least if the unsubscribe works with that provider, or you can put that into your spam and then stop distracting your phone inbox. But building a good habit around how you want to use email based on nature of your work will definitely help in reducing the consumption and distraction. And I really don't think most people need to check their email more than twice or thrice a day. One of the biggest casualties of continuous digital addiction is our ability to pay focus and attention to one activity at a time. It used to be that whatever we were doing, whether attending a class or reading a novel or being outdoors and playing a sport, we were consumed with that one activity and will spend anywhere from 10 minutes to multiple hours engaged in that activity. As a result, our comprehension of what's going on, our engagement level, the amount of joy one will derive from that activity is going to be that much higher. But today we have so much information overload and continuous stream of notifications that we are continuously going from one activity to another. People have been aware for a long period of time that as information increases, our ability to pay attention keeps decreasing. This was even clear in 1970s. Now we may think 1970s was this a golden era where everything was worry-free and there were no distraction, but Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon, he said in 1970s, what information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. So he was worried about this in 70s. And from 70s to now, I think information has probably exploded 1,000 times, if not more. It's growing continuously. It's vying for attention pretty much throughout the day. We get notifications from every possible apps, from social media, emails, instant messaging, various apps that are trying to sell us something, even totally mindless notifications such as this is what happened in your timeline 2 years ago, which is a notification you might get from Facebook every now and then, because these apps are continuously trying to capture your attention so that you come back to that activity, spend some more time, and increase total amount of time you're going to spend on that. But the damage of that is, I think, quite widespread. First and foremost, in able to learn, there are numerous studies which shows that whenever we are trying to learn, if you are able to be completely present, distraction-free, pay attention to that activity, our comprehension is going to be that much better. We'll be able to recall the information 1 day, 2 days later. We are able to synthesize and see the underlying pattern that much better. So it's great for learning. If you're trying to solve a problem, if you try to just sit alone with your pen and paper and pick up a problem and spend an hour or 2 hours only thinking about a problem, you will be pleasantly surprised with how many good ideas you can come up with. It's one of my favorite exercises to do. And I tell a lot of people also that, just do this exercise. Go to a room which is distraction free, no digital devices. Just sit alone with pen and paper for at least an hour. You will surprise yourself with how many good quality ideas will just pop up. It's not a surprise that a lot of us have great breakthrough ideas in our shower, because at the time we are distraction free. We are not consuming any information or engaging in activity. Our brains are free. There's no distraction. Hence, the propensity for ideas to bubble up is that much higher. People who go for long walks, who spend time in nature, they are able to get their distraction-free time, and hence you are able to generate that much quality of ideas. Attention is a very important component in any kind of relationship, whether a personal relationship or a work relationship. Highest mark of respect you can show to anyone is your undivided attention. Some of the leaders which are outstanding in projecting this charismatic outlook, what they have more than anything else, when you are in their presence, their gaze is fixed on you. They are completely focused on you, paying attention to everything you are saying. And as a result, you feel really special. You get deeply touched. And that's a great way to show that you are fully present. You care about what other person has to say. And the bond between two people gets that much stronger. And on and on. It's a very integral human capabilities to be able to focus on one thing at a time. But if we live in this world of continuous interruptions, today people flit from one screen to screen. There are a lot of studies which show that amount of time people spend on one activity is steadily going down and is accelerating. People switch from one activity sometime as fast as every 10 to 20 seconds. And that is undoubtedly affecting our ability to learn anything, our ability to solve problems, our ability to build meaningful relationships. The biggest antidote to creating this distraction-free environment in your life is to create those windows where you're alone with your thoughts, or with one problem statement, or with one activity, without any digital devices distracting you. If you can, leave your devices out of your room for a couple of hours, 4 hours, and work on one activity, you will be very pleasantly surprised with the quality of engagement, quality of outcome you will be able to do. It may be hard initially because we'll keep feeling that gentle tug of wanting to see what's waiting out there for us. But if you are able to do that, there is no question that what you will produce or the quality of your thoughts you will have will be that much better. I'm a huge fan of Cal Newport's book Deep Work, and the core idea behind that. Anyone who produces anything worthwhile is able to create the deep work window. Now, for some people, that deep work window could be 2 hours, 1 day, sometimes it's a 1 week, or even months. There are many authors which are known to just go away, live literally in a cabin in the mountains, and alone with their thoughts, and able to produce outstanding work. J.K. Rowling did that when she was writing Harry Potter. Henry David Thoreau has this famous book Walden, where he did his experiment where for 2 years he lived in a cabin in the wood, which he made with his own hands, and he wrote some of his best writing came out of that time. Every time I travel to US, as much as I hate the idea of 12-hour time zone difference, I also look forward to 16-hour flight from Dubai to San Francisco, where there's going to be no distraction. Unfortunately, there is internet on the flight now, but one challenge for me now is to not use the internet. There is really nothing out there, which cannot wait for 16 hours. But at least that time, there was no internet on the flight. Those 16 hours were almost only distraction-free time in my life, for 16 hours, I will not know what's happening in the world out there. And guess what? Nothing changes and the world goes on, whether you are engaging with it continuously or not. But I used to have so many ideas. It is almost like, being 40,000 feet up in the air was a time for me to develop a perspective on the projects I'm involved in. I'll write a lot of things, I'll process a bunch of things, and I'll land on the other side of the flight, much more clear head. But why does one have to wait for once a year a trip which may or may not happen? Why can't we have this distraction-free time on our everyday life? I'm trying very hard to create, for me, a good day is when I get at least 4 hours of distraction-free time. I use the phrase, deep work for that. And any day I'm able to do that, something really productive comes out of that. Sometimes it's a deep insight. Sometimes I write a long note. Sometimes, I make progress with the book I'm writing or the script for this podcast. But many other days when you are just mindlessly going from activity to activity, nothing much gets done. Just you feel productive, but it's ends up being quite a shallow work. So I feel it's very, very important that all of us take back our focus, cultivate the ability to be able to focus on anything. It could be a leisure activity. It doesn't need to be work activity all the time. It could be just a deep conversation with a close friend or a relative or a family member. But I would go as far as to say that we are not being human. We are just being busy. If we are not able to pay our attention to one thing at a time, and there's no question, and there's a lot of conclusive evidence now that continuous digital addiction, continuous stream of notifications is wreaking havoc on our ability to pay focus. One of the things that everyone can consider is to disable most of the notification on your phone. I haven't had notification on my phone for now at least 6-7 years. 100% notifications are off. That means, my phone, at least proactive, does not wake up. My phone does not draw my attention. Unfortunately, I still end up proactively going to my phone and locking in and going to a particular app, but still there is friction involved. You can think deeply about what notifications are that much critical, but I think most people can get away with the majority of notification. You can also create this silent window where you get zero notifications. Again, for me, my phone is on do not disturb mode between 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. If someone needs to contact me for an emergency, there are other ways, but not through my primary number. So you can think of, what relationship you want with your notifications, and whether you can create, longer windows in your day where you can have undivided attention to anything related to your personal life or professional life. I think it will do you a world of good. If you pay attention, you will notice that for most people, the moment you pick up your phone, the blue screen goes up. That is because there is this feature called raise to wake. By default, and no surprise, all these phone manufacturers keep that feature on. So the moment you pick up your phone, the screen lights up. If you have notification on home screen, you will see those. So you can just go to settings and disable that feature, raise to wake. Similarly, there's another feature, tap to wake. What that means is by accidentally you touch your screen, the phone again wakes up. You see the home screen and you see whatever happens to your home screen, and that obviously captures your attention. So for me, I've disabled both these a long time ago, and at least I'm in no danger of picking up my phone and suddenly something catching my attention unless I unlock the phone and want to go into a particular app, which is unfortunately still end up doing too much of that. But you can create more friction by disabling these two features, both raise to wake and tap to wake. Another casualty of continuous digital consumption is sleep. There is so much evidence in the last 20 years that the sleep quality around the world is continuously going down. Earlier, when you were done in the evening with your work, there's really not much to do, maybe some cable television, but after that, once you retire to your bedroom, that's it. But today, all of us take our devices with us. Most people sleep with their mobile phones within 3 feet of where they're sleeping. It's not more than 1 arm length away. And every, a lot of people, once they're finally ready to sleep, they'll go to their phone, go through their social media feeds, go through some content on any of the OTT platforms, and you don't know when it's going to stop, until you're completely numb from social media consumption. But in that process, not only you lose 1 to 3 hours, you're sleeping very late, but because of so much blue light going to your eye, the melatonin production is completely whacked, and you are not even falling asleep. You feel more and more alert as the evening hours wears on, and by the time you sleep at 2 or 3 a.m., you will get barely 4 or 5 hours sleep, which causes all kind of detrimental effects. And at some point, we'll do a lot more detailed episode on sleep alone. But in the last 10-15 years, so much sleep quality research has also come out. Now we have sleep labs around the world. We have great sleep tracking devices like Oura Ring that I'm wearing right now. India, we have Ultra Human, which is the same thing. So we are able to collect all this data, and what data shows that most people's both quantity of sleep and quality of sleep is continuously going down. And sleep has direct correlation for everything good in life. You're able to focus, your immunity, your how engaged you are in any interaction you are having with people. If you're working out, whether you get any gains from your workout is proportional to the quality sleep you are getting. So I think most people should rethink your relationship with digital devices in the context of sleep. I think a great idea is to not take your digital devices even to your bedroom. Whatever your sleep time is, ideally one should cut off all digital devices 2 hours before that. If possible, leave it in some other room, put it in a charger and forget about it. Many people have adopted the habit where they don't have any blue light in their life after, say, 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. You can have these dim yellow lights, which does not interfere with your melatonin production. You can completely stop your digital device usage after a certain time in the day. At the very least, you can change settings so that it becomes grayscale as opposed to color screen, or disable or enable the blue light filter so that you're not getting any blue light in your eyes. And with this, slowly your quality of sleep can go up. And the thing is, once you are able to get a good night's sleep, it triggers a positive reinforcement cycle. After a good night's sleep, your ability to fight impulses goes up that much higher. You don't get tempted easily. You are able to ignore distractions. Hopefully, your digital media consumption goes down during the day. As a result, you'll probably go back to sleep on time. You'll get a good quality of sleep and another day of even better resistance against any impulsive energies. So this feedback cycle works both ways. It's difficult if you're currently used to not getting good night's sleep. Probably transitioning from that to getting good night's sleep is going to take effort. You'll have to change your habits. You have to change your relationship with your digital media. But every day you're able to get a better sleep, you will be in that much better position. And this ability to control your impulses and find distractions will not only limit it to digital devices, but other kind of distractions which may not be good for your health or for your professional life. You will be in that much better shape to not fall for it and have that enough willpower, which goes up every time you get a good night's sleep. One more clear casualty of continuous digital consumption is the quality of relationships. Relationship requires undivided attention. But today, since all of us have our devices with us, whenever we are having a conversation, we are partly engaged in the conversation, but partly also quite alert to notifications that might be waiting. We may have the urge to go back and check our email or see the new WhatsApp message or new notification. Sometimes with the news, you watch, people having a dinner conversation. Undoubtedly, one or the other person will be checking their phone regularly. Sometimes it's so funny that you see all four people on the table are on their phones. You wonder, why did they have to come all the way to this restaurant for a meal together when they're going to spend most of their time on their phones. But it's not only, funny to look at, but I think the sustained impact it will have on the quality of relationship will be profound, because when you are not paying attention, people will not be able to be vulnerable. They will not have a deep, meaningful conversation. They will not share what's happening. If you're listening superficially, you may nod your head while your attention is somewhere else. You will not ask that follow-up question. You will not be able to repeat what is being said. You may not even remember what's said, So many times you will say that parents having conversation with the kids, but distracted kid is trying to tell them something, but attention somewhere else. That is not going to build a deep trust or open relationship where kids are comfortable sharing everything, because they will feel ignored. It may affect their self-esteem. They will, or they may role model same behavior where they want their own devices and look as distracted and cool, as parents are role modeling. And it is not only restricted to home situation. It plays out between friends. It plays out in work settings. I've been to many situations where, let's say an entrepreneur is trying to present to a VC and the VC is looking at the slides, nodding, but every few minutes, attention goes to phone. He or she is checking something on the phone. And at that point, they're definitely not going to be able to understand exactly what the entrepreneur is said. So much of our communication is non-verbal in nature. Today, there are so many studies which show that as much as 60 to 80% of communication is body language. But if somebody is not paying attention to body language, what facial expression doing, how hand gestures are, you're probably missing out 60 to 80% of communication. So the quality of conversation is going to be really poor. The impression you take away from that, the judgment you make about a situation or a person is going to be that much less well informed. And inevitably, you will either feel not understood, or you will feel lonely. You will not feel that strong association, which has been part of human culture since millennia. Everybody will have 4 or 5 really deep relationship. Most of that's a go-to situation for anything significant, good or bad, that happens in one's life. But in this social media rich environment where you have so many superficial conversation with so many people without any deep context or depth, this it's no surprise that a lot of people suffer from lack of connection, which results into lack of self-esteem, anxiety, potential depression. Shambhat talked about this in a lot of detail in his episode. So if you care about a relationship, at least the relationship that really matter to you, be on your guard. Make sure you are not taking your devices with you in all those relationships and giving a lot of attention to devices as opposed to people who really matter for you where you're trying to make deep connect. There's a study that was done in 2012 with 108 preteen participants. The participants were tested for their ability to read emotional cues. The group was divided in 2 halves. So when they were tested before the study, they were in the similar range in terms of their ability to read emotional cues on the photographs and videos that were shown to them. Then they went out on this wilderness camp, but the group was divided into 2 halves. First half was allowed to take their phones with them, the second half not. And after the 5 days of time spent in nature, but one group having their devices with them, they showed no improvement in their ability to read emotional cues, while the other group showed remarkable improvement. They were significantly better because they had so much more face-to-face communication. They were paying attention to other human beings. As we are shooting this section, I will request all our team, including myself, to leave our phones outside the room. And it seems like everyone is a lot more attentive and full attention on, what we are trying to say. And we had a good discussion before recording this section. But we all of us are used to just phone being around us all the time. And with the phone being around us and the blue screen waking up on its own on every notification, the temptation to go back into that and go out of whatever you may be doing is that much high. So it's something to really watch out for. I think relationships are deeply important for anyone's life, and you don't want to let these devices steal attention away from you and causing slow but sustained damage to relationships that really matter for you. Hopefully by this time you are convinced that continuous digital consumption is causing all kind of damage in your life, ranging from productivity loss, affecting your mental health, affecting quality of sleep, your ability to focus and pay attention to one thing at a time, quality of relationships. You definitely don't want so many bad things in your life. So what do? Somehow you need to take control of the role you are letting these devices play in your life. That is not going to be easy. In fact, I think it's extremely difficult. Personally, for last many years, I'm trying. I succeed sometimes, I fail at times, but I'm at it. And I think compared to most people, my digital consumption is a lot lesser, but it can be dramatically lower. So a lot of taking control of digital media consumption boils down to habits you have. We already covered the science of building habits, breaking habits in a lot of detail in the previous episode. You need to apply a lot of that into your relationship with devices. Most of our digital device consumption is probably habit driven. At this point, we don't pay attention. Our hands automatically go to the device, to a particular app, because it's a habituated behavior. Even without notifications, you are likely to just repeat same pattern and go back to same app because you're curious, you're looking for that next dopamine hit through engagement with the device. So, to break down what are the habits today that determine how much you're consuming your digital media, and slowly and steadily you have to work on each habit at a time. For example, where do you keep your phone when you go to bed? Most people probably keep it by their bedside. Now that's a habit, it's a default behavior to keep your phone, but that's one habit you can change. You can find an alternate place to keep your phone, which is at least 10 to 12 feet away, preferably in a different room. That's one habit change. Other habit change could be, when do you use your phone in the morning? If you're like most people, you probably use within first minute of waking up. Now that's today's habit. Tomorrow it can be different. Do you want to create a 1 hour gap where you don't use phone? And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you can apply everything we discussed in the habit episode to slowly try to develop the habit, which may take 4 to 6 weeks. You can use an accountability partner. Now, I've tried this a few times. About 4 years ago at CureFit, and I had this challenge where I told people that if anyone catches me using phone in a meeting, which I was definitely prone to do, they can immediately call me out and they can win ₹1,000 bet. Unfortunately, only one person ever called, and I did pay. But I wish more people called me out, because at that time, at least I had the habit of pulling out the phone in the middle of meeting. I think it's still there a little bit, but lot less. But just another habit you can work on, that when you are in an interview or in a meeting or on a dinner table, you just not allowed to use the phone, and you can make somebody else hold you accountable by creating some kind of penalty for engaging a behavior that you don't want to engage in. You can also club your digital media consumption with something that takes effort. Two of our team members in the podcast, Aditya and Ashmita, both related this story that at least during pandemic time, they got a stationary bike and they created this rule for themselves that they're only allowed to scroll social media when they are on the bike exercising. Now, that's a great idea. It also helps modulate the dopamine baseline, because exercise requires effort. It's a painful activity. It's likely to bring your dopamine down. And simultaneously, you are using social media, which presumably making you happy in the moment, is giving you that dopamine kick. And as a result, you are balancing both two activities out. One hard activity, bringing your dopamine down. One easy activity, bringing it up. And then you are able to maintain your baseline for a longer period of time. I was reading an article about Sundar Pichai. He has this deal with his son that he is only allowed to watch TV after he finishes some physical activity. That's a great idea. You create that hurdle that you use something good, and then you can use content consumption as a reward. During pandemic time, I did something similar. We were spending so much time in front of screen. At some time, I figured out that I can just put an iPad in front of a treadmill. I can slowly walk on that and do my Zoom call. And those days, I was able to get between 15 to 20,000 steps a day while getting my work done. As a result, although screen time was high, it was modulated by equally strenuous physical effort. Now, the other things to try is can you have one day a week where you don't use your phone? If you can create that one distraction-free day, I think it will do wonders for your life overall. You will be able to reflect on what happened last week. You'll be able to plan ahead. You can be alone with your own thoughts or the people you're spending time with. I think it's something everyone can incorporate in their life, Again, I wouldn't say that I do it, but my goal, and I think eventually I'll get there, is to not use phone for 24 hours, at least one day every week. There are many opportunities for you to replace what you do with your digital devices in the real physical world, how things used to be. For example, you can take notes on a real physical notepad and pen instead of taking notes on your phone, which will have all these distractions. You can go out and play instead of engaging in digital games. Every time you're outdoors, you're getting sunlight, you're physically active, you're moving around, you are interacting with real people. Similarly, instead of texting all the time, you can pick up the phone and have a conversation, even video conversation. They're at least talking to a real human being, and there is a back and forth and body language involved, and so on. So you can look at what are the opportunities where instead of using your phone, you can do something else. Sometimes taking the content from a small screen to large screen, which could be your desktop or television, also creates lots of friction, because phone is with you all the time. If you make rules that certain activities I will not do on phone. For example, you decide Netflix is not on phone. The only time you will ever watch Netflix on television, then at least, many parts of the day, it is off limits. You will not be able to use Netflix on your phone, and therefore, you are saved from at least the amount of time you spent on an OTT platform or your phone, and so on. You can look for everywhere. You can replace digital engagement with physical engagement. For the most part, it's going to do you world of good. Now, again, all this requires a lot of changes in your lifestyle. Design your lifestyle proactively. To make change to habits is going to be slow and steady. But all of it starts with a very deep realization that this continuous digital consumption, spending 5-6 hours a day, Picking up your phone 100, 200 times, getting interrupted every few minutes is absolutely not good for you. But if those activities are important, you can replace with something in the analog physical world, which will have a positive impact on your health, on your relationships, on your productivity, focus, and so on. I've said it many times, but it's so important that we acknowledge that, because the habit change will require that deep realization that these changes are important. You cannot make it all at the same time. You will be susceptible to keep falling back, because remember, these apps are designed by some of the smartest people in the world. They are absolutely at it. Google and Facebook still needs to grow. Number of people in the world are not growing. So therefore, they need more hours from us. The only way they get more hours from us by creating ever more sophisticated tools. And unless you put up your defenses and take control of what happens in your life, I'm not going to say that it's all a function of willpower, because the problem is much more complicated. You have something in your control, but you don't have everything in your control. You can take small baby steps, start making changes. Societies at large has encountered these situations before, where something is obviously bad for you is so widespread that no one even talks about this. Cigarettes was like that, pretty much throughout second half of last century. When I was growing up, cigarettes were very normal. People used to have these ashtrays in their living room. It was considered polite to offer ashtray to your guest when they come to your room. People used to gift each other ashtrays. It was very common in the office rooms. I recently heard stories of executives where the server will bring their cigarettes into the room at the appointed time. I actually remember in 90s doing an internship with and my boss used to smoke in his office room while having a conversation with me. Just 30 years ago, cigarettes was that much widespread. There were a lot of murmurs and rising evidence that cigarettes were bad for people. But tobacco companies went out of their way to deny. They recruited a lot of scientists to refute the claim that cigarettes can actually cause cancer. There's this very famous interview on the 60-minute show on PBS in 1996, where Jeffrey Wigand, which was the head of R&D at Brown and Williamson Tobacco Company, behind brands such as Carlton and Lucky Strikes, he testified that tobacco companies have known for decades that nicotine is highly addictive and their business model depends on that. That got a lot of attention. By that time, there were already many lawsuits in US, but the scientific evidence started piling up. A lot of citizens organized themselves in the groups to lobby against the widespread usage of tobacco and how easy it was for tobacco companies to advertise, to promote, even sometimes promote tobacco as healthy, all the way to even for pregnant mothers. But eventually the science stacked up. There was a mainstream consensus. Finally, politicians who were heavily funded by tobacco companies recognized that this is a groundswell movement that they cannot run away from. And slowly there was a spate of reforms. That taxes continued to rise. Tobacco companies lost a lot of multi-billion-dollar lawsuits. They've been paying penalties and settlements for last multiple decades. And today, even though cigarette consumption is there, it's largely invisible. People who want to smoke, they know exactly what they're getting into. The cigarette packet warns them exactly how detrimental it is going to be their health, and they need to go away from people around them so that they are not causing secondhand smoking. We have come a long way in terms of how we treat tobacco now versus how it was for 30 years ago. We have seen similar story play out in the widespread usage of lead, which used to be in petroleum, in paint, in how plumbing was done, and which over a period of time caused a lot of poisoning, especially among the younger kids. The industry was in denial. Eventually science caught up. Lead was banned and now you won't find it. Same story with DDTs, with chlorofluorocarbons, which were causing damage to ozone layer. Again, a lot of denial for a decade or two, but now the CFCs and DDTs are completely banned around the world. I think time has come where we need to treat the epidemic of digital addiction with the same lens. A lot of people from technology industry are starting coming out. Google design ethicist, Tristan Harris. He created his presentation called A Call to Minimize Distraction and Respect Users' Attention and Launch of Time Spent Well movement. It has gotten a lot of attention. His presentation went viral. A lot of people from industry are coming out and supporting him. There's increasingly more and more dialogue, like what we are doing in this podcast. A lot of outstanding books on this topic. One of the books I really like is this book, Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, who has deeply researched this topic and reported on how deep the digital addiction runs and how much in denial the big tech companies are. That is at least today, but I think a lot of scientific evidence is starting to pile up. In the coming decade, we should see a lot of studies which will validate and revalidate detrimental effect of continuous digital consumption. As our own awareness rises, as science adds up, eventually policy need to respond. I think long-term solution for helping people with digital addiction to have very strong policies, laws around what is allowed, what is not allowed. France has enacted this law called right to disconnect, which basically means that it's okay for you to not use email after office hours. In many work culture, you are expected to respond to email within an hour, no matter what hour of the day, which is obviously really bad for you. And if you're worried about that, you will not be able to disconnect, causing a lot of damage to your mental and physical health. But with this law, workers in France can feel more relaxed and not be under pressure to respond immediately. Similarly, China has taken a lot of measures to control how much content and social media can be consumed by younger kids. They've created a number of hour limits depending on the age, almost negligible for younger kids, little more for kids from the age of 6 to 16, little more for younger adults, and so on. This is another example of government taking control of how much content consumption is allowed when it is clearly known as really, really bad for you. I think we need a lot more proactive action from policymakers all around the world. We need to have a lot more open and honest dialogue about this. We need to publicize the studies which are already there. We also need to fund a lot more studies. Some of the studies will also be very contextual. How digital media affect a younger mind may be different than how affect adults versus how affect older people. There may be gender-based differences. A different type of digital consumption may have different type of detrimental effects. So we need to study this deeply, and we need to force all the big tech companies to build enough controls as well as enough warning labels and safeguards so we can watch for our own digital well-being of people around us. But we should not be naive enough to either think that we can manage this willpower alone. If I have strong willpower, I can completely disconnect. That's just not possible. We need these technologies for doing our work. A lot of things cannot happen. You cannot navigate from one place to another without using Google Maps, for example. The speed of communication is very important part of being productive. So we are dependent on these technologies, but we need enough support from the technology companies and from regulators. I would like to use today's podcast to almost like a call to action to policymakers in India to think deeply about this. We are very fortunate that we have an initiative like India Stack, which is a population level technology infrastructure, which is doing world of good. We have very strong data protection and privacy laws. It's time where we think about the digital well-being of 1.4 billion people in the country who all have access to very affordable phones and low-cost data, but these phones and data need to be put to good use, and we need to create enough protection around the areas where they are causing so much clear and visible damage to so many people at large. If countries fail to take control of this, if they don't build safeguards, they have only themselves to blame to let all the big tech steal away all the attention from their citizenry so they can sell more and more ads. But the resulting damage in people's health, attention, productivity will eventually lead to much higher rise in the overall health bill for the country, as well as reduced productivity is probably going to have an impact on the total economic output that the country is able to produce. I think this is a topic that we cannot no longer wish away. You just look around you, just go out for a walk and see how people are walking with their heads down, buried in their mobile phones. You visit any place where old people live. You see how infants are eating their food today, and it's a problem that you cannot ignore, or you can come with an explanation. Hopefully today I managed to convince you that this is a problem that to a different degree all of us are suffering from. I definitely suffer from it. It's a continuous struggle for me, and I do think willpower alone is not going to get the job done. With some habit changes I can make progress, but with a lot of support from the environment around me, support from the devices themselves, and support from policy, it will be much easier to deal with this. I think, when we look back on this moment 10 or 20 years out, we'll almost feel the same as we feel about tobacco. How did we let this happen? How could we let few companies steal away attention of billions of people for a profit motive, and no one else was doing anything about it? We have ignored it for far too long, but we cannot ignore it any longer. I would urge everyone listening to the podcast to think deeply about your relationship with digital consumption, relationship with those people around you, and whatever you can do to make small changes, as well as to increase conversation about this, put pressure on policymakers to think deeply about this. But I also have no doubt that, like how humanity has taken control of so many things that are bad for us but are mainstream, we'll be able to do something similar for digital addiction. So I'm quite optimistic overall. It may take some time, but it may take 10 years or 20 years. There will come a time where we'll be a lot more in control of how we are using technology for what is good for, and not letting technology steal away our attention and cause permanent damage to our health and well-being. Well, so there is a lot of food for thought. I hope you are watching this podcast while walking or doing something physically active. I don't want to spend 1.5 hours of your time just staring into screen. That's probably not good for your health, but this topic is very, very important. And now that we are at the end of this episode, please see if you are able to stay away from your phone or digital devices for next few hours. That'll be a good start. Everything starts with a small baby step, and just creating that few hours of distraction-free time will be a great gift to yourself. And you can think deeply about what kind of relationship you want with your devices. Who do you want to be in charge? At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.